Welcome to Gather In, where you'll hear stories of conversion to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you have an interesting story to tell, please go to our Instagram page or send us an email to gatherin@proton.me. Welcome to the Gather In podcast today, and I am joined today with two special guests, John and Nicole Stinchcombe. It's good to have you here, John and Nicole. How are you both today?
We're very well, thank you. Looking forward to this.
Good. It's good to sit down and have a chat. We had a preliminary chat. I think it's nearly 2 weeks ago. No, it'd be about 10 days ago. We had a chat to start with. So I'm going to let everyone in on a little secret that we are not related, although we almost are. but we almost are.
We almost are.
So John and Nicole are the grandparents of my son-in-law, who is married to Taylor, who is married to my daughter Miriam. That's how we're connected. So, as I said, we're not related, but we almost are. and I first got to know John working in the temple when I started as a temple worker. Yeah. John was one of the old hands there, and he sort of took me under his wing and showed me a few things that I needed to know, and encouraged me along the way. And it was always good. Along the way, he used to tell me about your son-in-law and grandsons who were surfing and going surfing all the time, and you and your family all live on the other side of Melbourne to me. So those guys surf the east coast and I surf the west coast. So I didn't know them, but I didn't end up realising, of course, that I would end up being related to them through marriage. So that was wonderful. So when we found out Miriam was getting serious with Taylor and everything, and I realised that you were Taylor's grandparents. That was wonderful, and Margot, my wife, of course, got to know Nicole working on the ladies' side of the temple, and so we've had this wonderful connection that started in the temple, become more of a family connection now through our daughter and your grandson getting married, which has been fantastic. So in our preliminary chat 10 days or so ago, we talked mainly about we started off talking, Nicole, about your childhood and growing up in France, and how you came to meet John, who was living in England. So let's go back to that again, and if you could tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in France and your family, and how you came to meet John and all that sort of thing.
How long do I have? I can be talking all day if you like. Okay, growing up in France. I was born in 1941 in occupied France, and about 15 kilometers north of Paris. And with my parents moving down to Paris in 1933 from the very north of the country. And they moved down for work. My father and my whole family in the north of France are linked to the SNCF, which is the railway network right through France, which is just state-of-the-art nowadays, and it was already state-of-the-art when I was a kid. And anyway, so my father was still working for the SNCF, the railways, in Paris. And it was great because we could travel wherever we wanted, whenever we felt like it, whenever we were able to or allowed to, for free. So that was wonderful, and it certainly helped when I became old enough to go off to England, and my parents didn't have to pay lots of money to get me there. I could go there for free. All right.
Wonderful.
So how did I grow up? I grew up in a Catholic family, and when I'm saying a Catholic family, it's one that had its roots deep into Catholicism or Christianity. It was just wonderful. I had lots of cousins and aunties and uncles, and I really learned the gospel through them, not through them reading the scriptures and saying prayers. And no, it wasn't like that. We learned the gospel through real life, what was going on in the family, and what was worth talking about, what was worth what we call taboo. You don't talk about these things. It doesn't belong in our family. Such a word was the word divorce. Nothing to do with us. We just put up with what's going on. And growing up with aunts, one in particular, she was the middle child of a family of 11. And Tante Therese was the boss of the family. And she taught me an awful lot. And as I said, not through reading books or anything like that. It was just through living. And all right, so I was allowed to go to school after the war was finished. And so that was what we call the maternal school, which is like kindergarten. And after that, my primary years, and I don't mean church primary, I mean primary schools years, would finish at the age of 14. But at the age of 12, I had a choice to make. And that choice had to be made by me, yes, but really by my mum and dad. It was going on to secondary education, not finishing primary with a little certificate telling me that I had gone to school till the age of 14. My parents weren't used to that. They left school. Well, my father left school at the age of 14. My mother only had about 2 years at school because of the First World War and the epidemic of the Spanish flu. And the thinking of the day was, a girl doesn't need to go to school after she's 14, so she never went secondary. She stayed in primary, and with all the bits and pieces that I've just mentioned, plus the house having to be rebuilt because the little village they lived in had been flattened in the First World War. My mum was she wasn't very open to education. She was very worried by it. And she could hardly read and write, really. And so that probably is the reason she used to call me the rare bird, because I wanted things which were given me by my teachers. I wanted them, but she didn't understand why I wanted them. She didn't well, my father said to me, all a woman needs to know is to cook, clean, knit, sew, and look after babies. The only thing I couldn't do was knit. So my sister, who is 9 years older than me, said, okay, I'll teach you how to knit. So, and I said, what are we going to knit? And I said, well, Dad doesn't wear pajamas. Maybe we can knit him a pair of pajamas. So she said, okay, I'll knit the top. It's more complicated. You can knit the bottom. Of course, at night, no television, no radio, nothing. We had electricity, thank goodness. And I would sit and knit, and I got to about that far up the leg, and my father said, "Okay, I can see you can knit. You can go to high school." So I was allowed to go to high school because I learned to knit. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's
That's
right.
that's a strange qualification to get into high school. You
It
learned to
certainly was. And then he said to me, "Well, why on earth do you want to go to high school anyway?" I said, "I want to learn to speak English." Well, that was the biggest joke out, because what on earth would that give me? What job would I get because I could speak English? And he thought it was the biggest joke out. So here I am.
Mm.
I've spoken English longer than I've spoken French. But
Yeah.
I've done all I could to keep my French up and to have it as fluent as my English. It's like learning a language or speaking a language is like playing the piano. You have to practice. And I practice with my reading and my listening and my speaking. Every 2 years, I kind of take a slice out of the family budget and go off to France for a couple of months, and I come back and I'm happy. And I was told by family in France that my younger members of the family in France that my French was frozen in the 60s.
Okay. Yeah.
Do
So
you
so
understand?
going to sorry,
Well,
going to high school, you found and your teachers found that you had a natural aptitude for
oh
learning
yes,
languages.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And don't don't forget too that in France, after 1944, the Germans went back home, but we had an invasion of Americans.
Mm, okay.
And they were very, very nice people. And they would kind of invade. As I said, Paris would be full of people speaking English, and I couldn't understand a word they said, and I didn't like that. So I wanted to learn English so I could find out what people were saying.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's right. Mm-hmm. So yes,
Okay. So
one particular teacher. Do you want me to talk about her? Yeah.
yes, yes.
This particular lady, Mademoiselle Lude, as I knew her, Mademoiselle Lude served in the Resistance in London during the Second World War. That's where she learned her English. And this lady could see that I had a gift there, and it was a gift, well and truly. And she wanted to speak to my mum and dad and proposed that I could go as an exchange student during the coming summer holidays. That was another step I had to cross, another door I had to open. But my
Mhm.
father, because it was free for me to go up there, you see, to England, it was okay to go. And so I went, and I was hosted by a family, and they had a daughter the same age as me. Went to school with her in a little village further up the coast, and that family was Alice and Leslie Stinchcombe, and they had a big brother or a big son, and this big brother, this big son, was 3 years older than me. So I was 15 at that time, and he was 18. And we were just friends. And as I left to go back home to France for finishing my studies, which would finish when I was 16 instead of 14, I said goodbye to them all, and I said, I want to do it the French way. And the French way wasn't just a pat on the back. A French way
Yeah.
wasn't a hand. Well, it could have been a handshake, but I was friendly with everybody, and everybody was friendly with me. So I gave them the bisou, one side, the other side, and this side. And they were all very happy. And John was the last one to come along, and I did this to him as well. And He blushed. I thought it was rather sweet. But Alice, his mum, said to me, Nicole, we get on very well. Anytime you want to come and visit, you are welcome in our home.
Okay, so that was the first of how many visits to the Stinchcombe home?
I've never really counted them, but I went back the following year, and after that it was every school holiday.
Okay.
So school holiday, there's 3 during a year, plus the summer.
Yeah.
Also,
so
your
wasn't
said no dancing.
Oh yes, the last of the, oh no, that's a good one, the no dancing. The last of this visit, my parents knew that there was something going on between the two of us, and John would write to me on a weekly basis. Of course, no phones in those days. Well, there were phones, but only for the very rich, and we were not very rich. And yeah, we corresponded every week, and they knew that there was something very special there. So as I got onto the train to go to, I think it was via Southampton that we went. So from the train in Paris to take me to Le Havre, and Le Havre caught the boat to take me to Southampton, and then the train to go to Bristol. And my father looked at me very, very seriously. He said, Nicole, no dancing. And I thought, strange. Why would he? And I said, no, okay, it's fine. No dancing. When I think back on it, this was 1957. France was still reeling after the 2 world wars and the crash, the financial crash of the country. And they didn't, and especially my family, we were very, not straight, but we were very aware of the pitfalls that could happen in one's life. And so the no dancing, my father had heard through some of his, the people that he worked with, that in America and in England, they rock and rolled. In England and America, they did all kinds of awful things. And, they didn't listen to classical music like we did. They listened to these awful awful things that could lead to you into a lovely little girl like his into trouble. So no dancing.
Right. So just something that came to my mind during the time that you were going to stay with the Stinchcombes in all those holiday visits.
Yeah.
You're a Catholic girl from France, and you were staying with a family that weren't a Catholic family, but were going to church. So what happened around that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think the first time I realized that the world wasn't Catholic was at school in England, in the little village of Sharhampton. And so Sharhampton secondary had girls my age, and one particular girl in the little group said to me, do you go to church? And I said, oh, yes. And said, oh, what church? And I thought, that's a funny question. I didn't say anything. I just thought it was strange, and I said, oh, the Catholic Church. And all of a sudden I felt this wall fall down between me and these other 15-year-olds who were around me. And I thought, what on earth is going on? It was the first time that I felt religious, not persecution, but religious misunderstanding somehow.
Yeah.
And later on, it really played on my mind because I had never felt it and never heard of it. And later on, I was looking, the Catholic church in the village where John lived was right outside the main village. And Catholic people, talking to John's mother, were not given the best jobs, and they were viewed as below the rest of the people in the area. And all I could think of when I'm home in France, Catholics, practicing Catholics, are viewed as very, very, very clever people. And they were viewed as people who had probably more money than others, better jobs than others. And I thought, what on earth is going on? And that played on my mind for quite a few years. And found out from books that the reason why there was this wall and this treatment of Catholics, and then how did France escape from that? And France just, there was a King Louis XIV, the one who built Versailles, and very, very wealthy and whatever. And this man said, if you're not Catholic, if you don't want to be a Catholic in our country, France, out you go. So not all, but most of the people that had espoused a new religion were going to either Germany or to America. Louisiana, full of French people, and other places as well. And and all because a king had chucked them out of the country because they weren't Catholics. And I thought it was a bit strange, a bit mean. And so all of that was through my mind. But when we decided to get married, I'd been going to church with his family in a little congregational church, and that was as plain as you make it, nothing fancy. It was all right. I was used to the beautiful masses in French, and no, not in French, they were in Latin, weren't they? So I didn't understand what was being said anyway. So I had to learn English in tertiary to actually find out how the Latin language shaped our Western society. And it was wonderful. It took me years to actually get that wall between me, the Catholic, and the rest of those girls in England, in Sharehampton, in the secondary, had put. That wall was there. It took me years to really work it out. But we got married in the congregational church. My parents came. They didn't say anything about the fact that it wasn't a Catholic church. They were too nice. They loved me too much to go and spoil anything. And we were in love, so who cared? As far as I was concerned, we were in love, and that was it. And we ended up with two beautiful children, Frances and David, and she's now Frances Duval, you may know her, and he's still a David Stinchcombe. And those two beautiful kids, they're the ones that stirred me up. All things inside, without bottling it all up, and they hadn't been christened. And that really played on me. And I thought, how can I do this? I can only do it in the Catholic Church. Couldn't do it in, I had not seen a baptismal, not a font as we know it as Latter-day Saints, but a baptism place for babies in the congregational church. I hadn't seen it, so So you want to know what happened then?
Yeah, I do want to know.
All right, then. Around about, it was 1963, was it? 1963, Francis was about 3, and David would have been 18 months or something like that. And it was lunchtime, and just put them to bed after their lunch. And I said goodbye to John because he came home to lunch. And and I could see from the top of the street 2 figures going in and out of people's gardens and houses. And I thought, oh, I wonder if they're going to come to me. Well, they did. 2 boys, 2 young men. They were slim. They're not slim anymore, by the way. They were slim, and they were, their face was radiant. Yes, they looked happy. And they started talking to me, and I heard about 15 minutes of what they had to say, and something within me said, there's something here that I want to hear, but I don't want to hear it by myself. I don't want to be split. You know, he was Congregationalist, I was a Catholic. No, I don't want that. All right. I knew it was about religion, and I knew that it had to be done properly. So I just went, stop. I don't want to hear another word. What I want you to do is come back tonight when my husband's home. And if you've got anything for me to give him to read about what you've just told me, I'd give it to him before you come, so he knows what it's all about. Yeah. Well, they were very glad to get it out of the pockets. They had everything ready there. And they went home, and they came back that night around about 7 o'clock. We'd finished dinner, and we had our first discussion together. And all of a sudden, wonderful. All of those little questions that I had in my mind, that I kept in my head, and that I only shared, well, I don't think I shared it with anybody. It was just all bottling up. Was, you know, all of those questions were being answered through the gospel of Jesus Christ. Wonderful.
Perhaps just at this stage, I wouldn't mind hearing John's perspective on this. Can you remember coming home from work, John, and having this proposition that 2 visitors would be coming in the evening after you'd had dinner?
Well, in that pamphlet, they answered 3 particular questions, and that was, where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going? Now, I'd never, ever contemplated that before. So that pricked my interest. And so they gave us the first discussion, and it was basically the foundation of Christianity at the time of the Savior, with the 12 apostles and stuff. So I had gone to church as a teenager, and because the Congregational Church was closer than any others, that was where I went. And they also had a very good youth club there. The vicar at the time was very youth oriented, and in fact he was the one that married us.
Yes.
Yeah. So although I had not gone to church in later teenage years, the Catholic Church didn't bother me, because when I went to school, at the morning assemblies, all the Catholic boys were excused, and I couldn't understand that either. But it was all because of King Henry VIII, and he wanted to get divorced, and then hence the Church of England was formed. And I think that's where the basic interest or concern about Catholicism came from. So yeah, after having that first discussion, we invited them back. Oh, the other thing was, they asked me to pray at the end of that first session, and I thought, well, I've never prayed out loud ever, but yeah. So also the word of wisdom was not familiar to me at the time either. So yeah. So I was smoking and I was drinking alcohol at the time, And in fact, on one occasion, returning from the social club, riding a motorbike and sidecar home, if you turn a left-hand corner too fast, the sidecar will tip you over. So this particular time, I was struggling on this corner, and I thought to myself, this is not good. I have two children at home. So the word of wisdom was an answer to me to get over these bad practices.
Oh, okay. So this would have come up not in the first discussion, but a little bit later on. So how many?
The motorcycle situation was well before the missionaries coming.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you were starting to sort of question things prior to the missionaries coming and knocking on the door. So when you came home from work that evening and Nicole tells you you're having two visitors come and they're going to talk to you about some religious matters, were you eagerly awaiting their visit, or how did you feel about that?
I think I was pretty nonplussed really at the time. I was, you know, in fact, that Nicole had shown me interest was enough for me to say, oh yeah, okay. And yeah, so also, I don't know how long after the missionaries first came, but in the weekly newspaper, there was a whole page full of anti-Mormon stuff. And I read and pondered this, and I took the newspaper back to Nicole and I said, this is absolute nonsense. And I said, because what they're telling me and how I'm feeling about the discussions doesn't ring true. And so I dismissed that. That didn't bother me either. So 1964, on the 11th of July, we succumbed to baptism in a very small branch of the Southwest British Mission. There were no families or children in this little branch.
Francis and David were the first children there. But all people.
And there they received their name and a blessing.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. How many times do you remember, if you attended church a few times before you decided to be baptized?
I can't remember.
Well,
we would have done.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just thinking, when the missionaries first arrived, it was quite cool. So it would have been later in 1963. And so July 1964 when we got baptized. So there was several months.
Yeah, we would have done it. Yes, we would have been. And there was a chapel that got built.
Yes.
Before we left for Australia.
So that would have been the only or first chapel built
in Bristol.
In Bristol.
That's right.
Wow. So I remember you telling me that it wasn't all that long after you became members of the church there in Bristol that you decided that moving to Australia would be a good thing. Can you tell me how that came about?
Right. Okay. So in my teenage years, I would go to the cinema, and periodically we'd have Australian movies, and with the scenery and the gum trees, that always fascinated me. So there was one occasion when I mentioned to Nicole, should we migrate to Australia? At that time, she said, well, I've only just left my family, I've left my religion, and I've let, the language has changed. So she said no at that time. But later, when we finally made the decision to come here, I was working in the aircraft industry at the time, and that company had developed the first vertical takeoff jet, and we were waiting for orders to come in, but there was a change of government. Labour government came in and squashed the whole programme, and there would have been 2,000 odd people lost their job.
Redundancies.
Yeah, so I was assured that my job was still okay, but the unrest and the strikes and that were going on was not nice. So obviously I'd come home this particular evening and probably looking a bit depressed, and she said, "I know what you want to do," and she said, "Okay, on 3 conditions. One is that we'll give the church a go. Secondly, I don't want to live in one of those hostels that we read about. And also a job before you go. You've got a job to go to." So within that week, in the local newspaper, there were 3 jobs advertised, 1 in Western Australia, 2 in Victoria. So I had job interviews, I had job offers, and I had to make a choice which one. So I chose the one in Victoria, which was Joseph Lucas, and that was it. So so we made the decision. We got tickets to come here on the £10 POMs, and so the company had found a house for us to live in for 3 months. After that, we had to find our own way, and had the job to go to, and we gave the church a go. And so the church a go was Moorabbin Chapel. There was a Bishop Foreman, I think it was at the time, and yeah, so we settled in very quickly because although we didn't have any other family here, church members became our family.
That's right.
And that was the best thing we ever did, apart from getting married.
One thing I want to add here is in England, we were blessed by John's family. John's grandmother, when she passed on, there was money left for both of us as a deposit for our first home. And we were thrilled, and we had bought or started buying this house in a little place called Winterbourne in Gloucestershire. And by the time the missionaries came to us, we had sold that house and bought something closer to John's parents, because we didn't have a car and it was difficult to go and visit. And so we moved close to John's mum and dad's place. That's where the missionaries came to us. And when the word of wisdom wasn't a hard thing for us to swallow, the one thing that was very difficult was
tithing. So when he taught us about the principle of tithing, I understood what it was, because in a little village, Sharhampton, there was a tithe barn. So it was a farming area as well. So all the produce of cattle, 10% was paid into this tithe barn for the poor and needy. So, but because we had a mortgage, we were trying to set up this home with 2 children. I said to the missionaries, I'm going to find this difficult. And this senior missionary was quite wise, and he said, "Can you understand that it is a commandment?" I said, "Yes, I can," because I understood it. And they said, "Well, that's between you and the Lord." And okay, and soon after that was the situation of the redundancies in the company I was working for. So all overtime was stopped, and we still survived. So I said to Nicole, "Look, this principle of tithing, we're still surviving. I'm sure that we can manage 10% tithing." And we did. And from that time, we've been certainly blessed.
Mhm,
No doubt about that.
mhm.
Wonderful. Coming to Melbourne to live, getting to know church members in the Moorabbin ward and taking on responsibilities in the church, along with working. How did that all go for you?
When I first came here, I was still a teacher. We went through as adults then, at the time, deacon, teacher, priest. So I was still a teacher. And very soon afterwards, I was called as an elder, and elders' quorum was constituted several chapels, groups in several chapels which formed a quorum, different to what it is now. So very soon after, I was interviewed and called as the elders' quorum president, which was south of the river, constituted Croydon, Dandenong, Caulfield, Moorabbin, and Frankston. So groups of elders there from the quorum. And we used to have meetings on a Wednesday evening. And when President Davis, Perth Davis, called me to Heidelberg and invited me to become the elders' quorum president, and I could think of all these members that had been long-standing as elders, and I said, "Why me?" And he said, "Why any of us?" And so I was called as the elders' quorum president. So visiting Croydon and Dandenong and around, and that was certainly a growing experience. And then not long afterwards, I was called as the bishop of the Moorabbin ward by President Truman, Harry Truman at the time. So so that was progress in the church.
And the members in the Moorabbin ward were wonderful.
There were the Woodfords, there was the Tormeys, who
the
all
Pococks.
had the Pococks, who all had families, and it was just wonderful.
They were really, really well. One thing I had not taken on board when we decided we'd come to Australia, and that one thing was cousins for my children, aunties and uncles for my children. It was just John and I and our 2 children. We soon added Joelle, who is your daughter-in-law now, and Leslie. And then Daniel just appeared. We didn't particularly ask him to come, but all of a sudden we had a 5th child.
And he's now the bishop of Rosebud Ward.
That's right. But what I really want to say is that those cousins and those aunties and uncles were members of the church.
Yeah, you had a family waiting for you.
We had a family around us, and a family that helped raise my children, or our children, should I say? Yeah, and people that
at the same standard.
Yes. People that taught us so much, like my uncles and my aunties in France, especially when I went back. When I would go back as a child during the school holidays, the pearls of wisdom I learned from those people. It was the same with the members of the ward in Moorabbin. And then I was called to be a counselor to Sister Lois Mers for 5 years in Stake Relief Society. She was like a 3rd mum or 4th mum. I had, my 3rd mum. She was my 3rd mum. In the gospel, she taught me so much. And we worked together so well. And it wasn't just joining the church. it was overcoming the word of wisdom, overcoming tithing, overcoming commitments to serve. That's right. Oh, and by the way, it took us quite a while to get a car. We were still on motorbike and sidecar. And a couple of years ago, I was teaching in primary, the Valiant class, and I was telling them about that. And one of them said, "Did you wear leathers, Sister Stinchcombe?" I said, "Of course I did." They thought it was very, very funny, you know. Yes, so we've learned from our family, our adopted family.
Yeah.
And
one other thing was that we committed to serve as senior missionaries. So we were assigned to the Sydney Temple to help up there. But 6 weeks in, on our P Day, we went into Sydney, we went into the Botanical Gardens, and also to get a lighter weight suit. So, so not long into the Botanical Gardens, Nicole said, "I'm feeling weak, I have to sit down." So that continued on around. So we cut our visit short there. And then we started to walk up to George Street to the suit shop, which I can't remember which it was. Fletcher Jones, yeah. And so Nicole was struggling to walk up George Street. So let's take the bus. And she said, "No, we'll continue." So anyway, I got the suit, we returned home, and we went straight to a doctor and explained the situation. He said, "I'm not really sure. I'll take a blood test, call back in 3 days for the result." Well, he rang 10 o'clock that night and said, I've arranged that you have to go into a hospital now. So, well, that put up a red flag. And so anyway, we found our way across to this hospital, and the situation was that Nicole, in blood count, instead of being 130 for an adult woman, 40 count. So she was low on blood, so they packed 3 packs of blood into her. Then we went to a specialist and said, "Got bowel cancer." So do you have family in Sydney? No. Where is your family? Melbourne. You're going home. Your family will need you. You will need the family. So we packed up the car that we had at that time and drove back to Melbourne and went to hospital and had the treatment for bowel cancer, and she's still here.
I'm still alive.
Right. So I'm guessing time frames, this would have been perhaps in the 1980s, was it? In the late 1980s, perhaps?
The cancer was 2008.
Oh, that recently.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that was quite a while ago.
It was after we had both retired, and after this, yeah. So we were both. John retired earlier than I did because we wanted to take care of John's mother as she was getting older. So that's why he stopped at 59. But I had only just really started my career, and I didn't want to let go. So I retired in 2007, I think it would have been. And the minute we retired, we decided to serve a mission. And we only stayed for about 6 weeks. But
the short mission. Nicole, can we just backtrack a little bit, because you mentioned about serving in the Relief Society presidency with Sister Mers, Lois Mers as the president, and it was Marie Cray who was a counsellor with you. And after 5 years, you were released. And you and Sister Cray got together and had a chat and agreed to do something back then.
Yes. 5 years in Stake Relief Society with Lois Mers was a lot of work. And we learned to work at her pace. And after our release, which was done in the Relief Society room in Moorabbin, we were in the corridor, Marie Cray and myself, and I looked at her and I said, Marie, what on earth are we going to do with all our time? Because we had a large slice of our week for Relief Society, not just in our ward, in all these other wards that John was talking about. And we were very, very busy. And Daniel was only a little one when I started. He was in kindergarten. So by the time that we finished the 5 years, he was probably in grade 3 or 4 or something like that. And what on earth was I going to do with all my time? And Marie looked at me and she said, I don't know what. And I said, I haven't been to university. And she said, neither have I. And I said, oh, let's go. I said, you're the secretary. She'd been released, but she was the secretary. I said, can you do the footwork to find out what and where and how much it would cost us? And so she did all that. And she said, I'm going to come with you. We're going to do it together. So we did a 4-year bachelor and 1 year for teaching for me, a diploma of education. And it's something that I treasure, something that I've always wanted to do. And I waited till my children were grown up enough. Our children, when we decided I would go back to school, we had a family council and sat them around us and explained to them what we were going to do. By that time, Frances had already got her tertiary education, and so she understood. The others understood the value of education and the value of service. Mum had served them put them first, put my education behind. And so I looked after the children first, then serving in Stake Relief Society. And now Mum, it was her time. And they knew that. And they knew that they had to help me. And helping me wasn't do the dishes and sweep the floor and make up your bed. It was behave yourself. Be a good son or daughter, and don't bring worries home to Mum and Dad. Just work out your problems, talk about them with Mum and Dad, but don't expect Mum and Dad to do the work for you. And it worked. It worked.
Yeah. So you did 4 years at university and became a high school teacher or a primary school teacher?
High school. I was doing a teaching round, used to call that in those days, and at Wesley College. And before I left, I was asked to go into the principal's office, and I was offered a job.
Okay.
So
and teaching which subjects?
French, of course. And
I didn't know, but I had a feeling you were going to say that. Yeah.
Yes, I taught French, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The kids were very responsible and very responsive, and it was beautiful. Really enjoyed it, and I moved on. I taught at Wesley for 10 years, and then we moved up to Mount Eliza, where the family was getting married and all these things, and we just decided we'd sell our house in South Oakley and go and buy a home closer to the kids. And now we're all on the peninsula, and so we've got that network going as it used to be in my family in France, in the north of France, with the aunties and uncles and cousins. And when we get together, there's 65 of us plus. So it's quite busy. Yeah.
It's a big tribe. So just looking back over your life now, you're both. I'm not giving away any secrets. You're both in your early 80s, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I'm 86.
86, and so you've both lived long, healthy lives.
That's right.
Looking back to the time, perhaps when you were first married, and those two young missionaries came and knocked on your door in Bristol. Do you think it would have led you to where you are now?
Oh no, they certainly changed our lives.
Yeah.
Oh, no question about it.
Uh-huh.
I've often wondered what we would have done if we'd stayed in Bristol. They wouldn't have offered the opportunities that Australia has given us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gospel.
Yeah. And coming to Australia and having that ready-made network of church family for you to associate with and become your family here, that was a huge blessing in your life, wasn't it?
Oh yes.
Oh
yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we, with the Tormes in the Woodfords, the Tormes and the Bococks more in particular, used to share Sunday dinners together after church, and the kids would play together, and
yes,
it was wonderful.
A couple of months back, Ramona, who was Ramona, what's the family name again? Well,
Hope.
No, she was her maiden name.
Oh,
Page. So Ramona Page, who is the same age as Leslie Tennant. Leslie Tennant is our daughter, our fourth child, and so Ramona was talking to me about growing up in the Moorabbin ward and the fun that she had with our children, and how Leslie would invite people to dinner on a Sunday without asking me and raving on about what we were going to have for dinner, you see. And she said, Nicole, we used to look forward to it so much. And I said, well, I never knew who was going to be there. And Leslie would say, oh, you better come. We're having Yorkshire pudding today. Oh, we're having this and we're having that. And yes, it was good to have this network around us. Mm-hmm. It was good.
Yeah, fantastic. And tell me, one thing I often ask people is there something about the gospel? Is there a particular practice or doctrine or whatever that you find is your particular thing that's become your sort of favourite aspect at all of being part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and having accepted the restored gospel? It's a multifaceted sort of thing that you're involved in. Yeah,
it's all of it. It's not anything, well, for me anyway. It's all of it. And actually, John and I, a couple of months back, we were talking about what's the church done for us, and we both agreed that even if it was all a hoax, the whole thing, what it's done for us, the way it's shaped us as people, is worth it. Even if it was rubbish. You know what I mean? Is it difficult to? I'm not using the right words.
No.
If the gospel was all just a big story to get people in, which it is not,
and there was no afterlife or anything.
Yeah.
What the church has done for us is beyond price.
Yeah, I think a scripture comes to mind that by their fruits you shall know them.
Yeah.
And I think it's fairly obvious from your lives that having both been raised in religious families, John, you in the Congregational Church, and Nicole, you as a Catholic, you both had an understanding about God, a belief in God, and a belief in Christ. But you know, becoming members of the restored church has brought a lot more into your life. It's a lot richer because of all of that. And as you,
on the other hand, Murray, me in particular, with my Catholic background and my tertiary education added to that, there's something great about the Catholic Church, which we don't have.
Yeah.
There's something missing.
What do you think that is?
Modern revelation.
No, modern revelation we've got, but missing. I miss certain aspects of the Catholic Church, the ceremony, the music, the beauty,
the tradition,
the traditions, the way the Catholic Church has been able to bring food as parts of the gospel. Yes, how? You bless the vineyards so as, or not you, the priest would bless the vineyard so as the crop would be good, would have good bottles of wine. Same with the wheat, same with all kinds of things. And I don't know, there's just, but that very thing is also been the down of the Catholic Church. For people like ourselves, my family in particular now, see us as weird because we go to church every Sunday. And they see their way a lot more sensible. Their way is keeping an eye on the 5 important things in your life: christening, first communion, where you receive the Holy Ghost, confirmation, marriage, and death. That's all you need to do. You don't have to go to church every Sunday. You can go to church on Christmas or on Easter and things like that. That's seen as okay. But going to church every Sunday is old hat. And it's the people who do go every Sunday are either very old or extremely rich. That's it.
Yeah, it's what we practice as Latter-day Saints is quite different, isn't it?
It is, yes.
That's a Congregationalist used to go to church every Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, so. But well, the 12-year-old confirmation, it seems strange to us as Latter-day Saints. It's very similar to the endowment, 12-year-old. And it's all to do with the fact that back 100 years ago, a 12-year-old was needed in the farm. So didn't have to go to church every week. And he or she had to be available for mum and dad for the busyness of a farm, or busyness,
especially at harvest time.
Yeah, harvest times. Even schooling, harvest was from July, August, and September, those 3 months. And the kids were just fully involved. I never get sunburnt. I can't, because I worked in the wheat fields gleaning. You know, people nowadays don't know what gleaners are or what gleaning is, and I sure do. And a friend of mine in France, who's about the same age as myself, she was also brought up on a farm, and I said to her, did you do any gleaning? Of course I did. She said, I had to do in my living, And, so a child at 12 was an adult almost.
Yeah. So the expectation in France, to be a good Catholic is that you attend church a couple of times a year, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, you're a staunch Catholic if you go, 2 or 3 times a year, Christmas, Easter, and maybe the Pentecost, that Pentecote, when at the resurrection of Christ, the Sunday of resurrection. And that you are really serious about your religion. Yeah.
It's an interesting contrast. Look, we probably have pretty much gone long enough. I think it's been fantastic hearing from you both about how you came to become members of the church in the UK, and then moving to Australia and being able to keep that going. That was, one of your conditions of moving to Australia was that you wanted to give the church a go. Give the church a go. It's an unusual way of saying it. We wouldn't sort of say it that way these days, but you would say, "Oh, we want to be active in the church. We want to do things,"
That's right.
And that was a great thing to do. And without that, who knows what would have happened as far as life is concerned. But anyway, you have a wonderful family, and we're very happy that our daughter Miriam has come into the Stinchcombe Rubenstein clan, and we feel part of that clan now as well.
That's good.
We're just on the wrong side of the bay, aren't we?
Yes.
Oh, I know. You've got to move down the peninsula, Oh, yes. You'd have friends because, Maury would take you surfing every day. He watches the weather very carefully, and you never know, he might even take you up to climbing up the Himalayas, and
yes, that would be amazing. So look, thanks very much for your time today. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Murray.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time today.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
If you have an interesting story to tell, please contact us via our Instagram page or send an email to gatherin@proton.me.